Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about this 5th gen bumper on the 3rd gen RAM again. I've had quite a few people ask me if I could do a video explaining what I had to do to get this bumper onto this 3rd gen RAM. The plan was to remove this bumper to paint it. I want to two-tone it to match the rest of the truck. I just don't know when I can get that scheduled in or when that can happen. So I'm going to try to do my best to explain what I had to do to get this bumper on this truck without removing the bumper. Now remember, these bumpers are on the 3/4 ton Rams or even the 1 tons. So what I have put it on here, this is a 3/4 ton truck. So one thing to remember, that it is the same frame essentially that Dodge is using for even the newer the 5th gen, 4th gen, what have you, the 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks. So brackets that came with this particular bumper, they were not the exact same, but the frame size is the same, so you know those horns will fit right onto these newer brackets that are on these bumpers. So that's not an issue at all. Now if you were to take the original brackets that are with this bumper and put it right on this truck, it does go on the frame. It does kind of fit. Of course, your mounting holes on the bumper, your bolts that hold the bumper onto the frame, those are different. So the holes are not in the exact position. So those obviously have to be re-drilled. But the biggest issue that you run into by just putting it on the way it is you have a big gap here. We're in the center where the grill is. So you have a gap there, and your bumper hangs out too far to the front. So basically, you're trying to move the bumper in and up. So what I had to do on this particular truck, this being a diesel, it has an intercooler in the front, obviously. And you can see that here was where my interference was. Now, if you have a gas truck, that's not going to be an issue for you. There is no intercooler in the front. And you can see where I ended up cutting this bracket. You can see this bracket where it bolts on to the bumper. There's a bolt here, and originally there was a bolt about here too. I ended up cutting that whole section of it off to clear the intercooler, and of course I had to do that on both sides. You can see that bolt here if you're looking at the bumper bracket from top, and there would have been another bolt right about here, and that had to be cut off. And of course there's 2 more at the bottom. Those can stay. If we look through the fog light hole, you can kind of see where I ended up cutting it. You can see where it comes through here. You can see I had to cut that bracket flat here all the way up, including the bolt or the bolt hole, to clear this intercooler that was here in the way. And you can see that here. And I had to do that on both sides. And you can see that here. Here's my bracket, and here's the intercooler. So originally this bracket would be about up to here. So again, that was the interference here in the front, and that wouldn't allow it to go far enough back. So now we're underneath. My apologies, guys. I'm not able to get very good pictures of this. I should have done this while I had the bumper off, but I didn't know if it was going to work or not going to work. Once I did get everything to line up, I left it bolted on, and it's been on it ever since. I will try to do my best. So you can see here is the bracket for the bumper. Bolt here, and there's a bolt up top. You can see on the inner side where I had to notch that bracket to clear the intercooler. Same thing on the other side. Do the exact same thing here. You can see that shape going this way and up that way. And that's to clear this intercooler. So once you have the top of the brackets here cut to clear the intercooler, your bumper will slide further back. Only other thing that you need to do, I took about 1/8 of an inch off from the back of these brackets, so it'll go even further back. So looking at the back of the brackets here, this is where they end up onto the frame, and I took about 1/8 of an inch all the way around off of here too, just so it would go further back, because it hangs, it kind of hits this body mount here. So again, about 1/8 of an inch I had to slice all the way around from the back of the brackets on both sides to get the bumper to go back further. So that's here all the way around. Now the other problem you'll have is even doing that, that'll set the bumper far enough back, but you still need the bumper to go up to cover the gap. By doing that, cutting the back of this bracket and this corner off will get your bumper on and to go far enough back to get this line lined up correctly on the edges. Now the next things you will need to do is the bumper will sit kind of low. So to raise the bumper to cover the gaps, what I ended up doing was moving the whole bumper up from the brackets. Once I had the brackets mounted where I wanted onto the frame and the holes drilled to mount it onto the frame, I removed the bumper back off, and I was able to move. See, the whole bumper is held onto the brackets by these bolts. Again, originally there's one here, one on this side, and there's two at the bottom. To raise the bumper up onto the brackets, you can see the original holes that the bumper was mounted to was here and here, and of course this side's been cut off to clear the intercooler, and the upper ones are up here. So what I ended up doing was, instead of having the bracket mount to the bumper here, I ended up drilling holes on top of it, about 1/4 of an inch. That's about high as you can go, and that raised the bumper up. So the brackets, so this piece here is mounted to the frame, and this piece is what's holding the bumper, which is here. And by moving the holes up, the whole bumper moves up. And I did that on both sides. And that moved the whole bumper up and covered the gap underneath of the headlights and the grille. And again, I did that on both sides. You can see that here where the original hole was. And I drilled it here. Same thing here. And I ended up drilling it here and moving the whole bumper up. For mounting holes for the bolts that hold the bumper onto the frame, those holes are going to be off, so you have to re-drill new holes all the way through so your bolts can go through. And of course I had to do that on both sides. The original holes on this bracket to mount to the frame was here, so you got to drill them a little further back on both sides again. And that gets your bumper to sit far back enough. I apologize for the terrible video. The truck is wet. I know things are kind of hard to see. But this being that I didn't do a video when I did this originally, it's kind of hard to explain this way. But if you're somewhat mechanically inclined, you got a grinder with a cutoff wheel and just a drill with a step drill. That's all you really need. It's not rocket science. Basically, you're trying to push the bumper far enough back and up to take care of the gap. Again, if you have a gas truck, you shouldn't have to cut this side of the bracket off. All you need to do is cut about an eighth of an inch from the back of this bracket so it can go far enough back without hitting the body mount, and then moving the whole bumper up onto these brackets. Once you have these mounted to the frame, you can move the whole bumper up on these brackets. And again, I just went all the way to the top of that bracket to drill the hole. If you're trying to put this bumper on a half-ton truck, those brackets most likely will not work since the frame horns are different on the truck. It's a different frame. But I'm sure those could be modified also to fit on the truck. But at that point, I think you're better off just buying aftermarket brackets to go on those and modifying those to take up the gap. Because I see some of the aftermarket brackets, they do fit, they work, but the gaps are large. Now, another thing to remember, if you have hooks on your 3rd gen, those hooks will not work because those are actually mounted to the bumper brackets and they mount to the frame, and that setup just does not work. That's something I'll be doing later on. I want to actually maybe go with the 5th gen hooks on this, or maybe just put some lights in there. I'd rather have hooks, but that'll be a different project. Again, I apologize for the terrible video, but if you're somewhat mechanically inclined, it's a lot of going on and off with the bumper, but you can get it done. The basic steps, remember, you're just trying to get the bumper. If you're putting on a 3/4 ton, it does kind of just slip onto the frame. You just have to cut the back of the brackets and then move the bumper up. Now remember, the further back you go, it does kind of mess up that arch on the wheel well. Now if you're running bigger tires, that might be an issue. So you might have to cut into the bumper here if that's what you're looking to do, is run bigger tires with these bumpers on. But it's not hard to do. It is kind of hard to explain now that I've done it and then the bumper's on the truck. If you're looking for additional pictures or what have you, just let me know. Eventually I do plan on pulling this bumper off to repaint and clean everything up, and maybe I'll do a better video or better pictures then. Thank you for watching.